purpose of the symposium is to head us down some new ways of measurement of trypsin inhibitor, but also hopefully to give a better understanding of what the past has been, and additionally probably give you an exposure to a better understanding of why the soybean plant and many other legumes and other grains also have trypsin inhibitors present in them from a crop production side of things with it. And so we'll hopefully cover a fairly wide area here this morning. Our first speaker is Mr. Gordon Denny. He spent 28 years with Bunge, one of the primary 4 processing companies globally. And he'd had different roles of running the plant and understanding each of the functions within the areas of the soybean meal processing plant. And he also had responsibility for purchasing and marketing of purchasing whole soybeans and also marketing soybean meal at Bunge. He retired from Bunge and in about 15 years has run his own consulting company. And his topic today, the title is going to change a little bit, you'll see on his first screen, is to kind of overall talk about 2 pieces: the economics of what is really driving both the protein and also the energy cost side of things with it, and the aspects relative to the quality programs within the soybean meal processing area. So, Gordon?
Thank you. I appreciate the honor of your time. I grew up about 50 miles away from here, backwoods, southern Indiana, hillbilly farm kid. And after about 45 years in the soybean business, it's about the only thing I really know. So I'm not going to do what Greg asked me to do. I am going to address urease and trypsin inhibitor, and believe me, none of that stuff means much to a soybean processing guy. I'm just going to be real honest with you right up front. So as we go through this, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the dynamics of change, why we have a 20% expansion in the soybean processing industry in the United States, and the implications that will have for you. I will address trypsin inhibitor just to keep Greg off my back a little. U.S. soy needs you now more than ever before in its history, again, because of this expansion, the dire need for domestic consumption of soybean meal. We have 2 new plants that started up last year. We have 5 new plants scheduled to start up this year, and 2 more in 2025. That's a 20% increase in soybean meal availability. So we're going to go from 48 million metric tons to 58 million metric tons in just 3 years, 10 million metric ton increase. Huge, unprecedented. So going from 61 operating solvent soybean processing plants to 70. And it's driven by RD and SAF, renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel. And it's creating new relationships. The carbon intensity or the CI score is a big deal. And also politics and policy, sometimes not logical, sometimes not well thought out. And it's causing some real disruptions because of importation of used cooking oil, Argentine soybean oil, tallow from Brazil. So there's lots of implications where soybean oil, these plants are expanding for soybean oil, not soybean meal. So the soybean oil disappearance for renewable diesel that was supposed to be huge and significant. The guys at Argonne assigned soybean oil about a 50 CI score. Well, canola oil, lard, tallow, imported used cooking oil all have a lower CI score, therefore a higher subsidy. So in the future, oil will subsidize protein. There'll be a greater availability of soybean meal. I think you're going to see lower protein prices, lower feed prices, and I asked some friends at Centrec to do the calculations. A 20% drop, or about $100 per ton soybean meal price, which we've already seen, will lower feed costs by 8%, or about $25 a ton lower feed costs. So hopefully you're seeing that. Sustainability, CI scores, customer demands equals more communication, cooperation, and trust in the soybean value chain. Why will U.S. soybean meal quality continue to improve? And I've got some slides on that a little later. Consistency. We have, there'll be a lower standard deviation in your formulas, I think, that you'll be able to utilize. The protein will be more consistent due to improved seed quality and the new plants. Some higher energy, both from, these plants are all going to produce RBD, refined, bleached, and deodorized oil to go into renewable diesel and SAF. That's what they want. So where do the gums go? That's a lot more gums, lecithins, phosphatides, whatever you want to call them. So they will probably be added back to the meal. What does that do? It dilutes the protein a little bit. You get free fat. It may also reduce the bulk density a little bit, but it's in net, it's a good deal for you. So urease activity, or is it TIA or TIU? I don't know what the industry wants. I honestly don't. But toasting is not a problem with U.S. solvent plants today. And I've seen spreadsheets where every rail car is measured for protein, moisture, fiber, fat, urease, and then some delta on some of those. And the toasting or the urease activity, which is the trade standard, is very, very consistent. Trypsin inhibitors. A processor like me, I don't know what that means. It's not a measurement. We never have used that word at a soybean processing plant. So when Greg asked me to talk about this, I said, sure. I had to look it up. I've really worked with these guys for 15 years with Animal Nutrition Working Group, and I had a feeling for it. And then Harry he's an expert in all this. We will speak in a second. But toasting, it's a big deal. That the KOH, the protein solubility, if you don't toast it, it's a real problem. If you over toast it, it's a real problem. So here are the processor quality specifications based on the NOPA solvent trade standards. Crude protein, and at 47.5 to 49 is what's in print. It's usually negotiated a little lower than that nowadays. So these are the standards. So whatever you agree is different. Fiber, 3.3 to 3.5. Moisture, a maximum of 12% with an allowance up to 12.5. So as a plant manager, what did I want to do? I wanted to sell water as meal price, right? So 12.5 was my goal because you can't claim until 12.6. So when I ship 12.5, I get paid for water, number one. And number two, I don't use as much energy to dry the meal down. Oil, a minimum of 0.5% residual fat left in the meal. And then we'll add, the decimal point I just now see is wrong, 0.5% or 10 pounds per ton. It used to be a kaolin, which is ball clay, and now it's mostly ground crushed limestone that is added as a flow coating agent to the meal. Toasting and urease activity has been established at 0.2 to 0.02 as the standards. And again, these plants are all computer controlled. So where's the toasting done? In the DTDC, desolventizing toaster, dryer, cooler. It's the largest vessel in a plant. It looks like a big rocket ship. 500 or 600 horsepower motor turning this thing around with multiple 10, 12 different kettles inside of it with various types of either live sparge steam or heated steam. So it's based on time, temperature, and moisture in the toasting kettle. But I personally think that there are several other considerations to the urease activity. And is it the particle size, the steam flows, the quality of the steam, oil content, protein levels, the bed depth level in this kettle? Nobody's ever analyzed that. So I think there's some options out there to dramatically improve the measurement and the toasting of meal. Every plant is highly computer controlled in the United States. It just is. Has been for 20, 25 years, and it's getting more and more precise in how these vessels operate. Very consistent. Over toasting, we didn't like to do that. The meal looked bad. It smelled bad. It used more steam. It was overly dry. Under toasting obviously hurts customer demand, soybean meal quality, prices, and the plant reputation. Why is soybean meal quality going to improve in the future? Well, we got new plants, new equipment, new operators, and these new plants, which is a big benefit for you as a soybean meal buyer, they have to buy their way into existing relationships. These new plants that are starting up typically have 0 meals sold ahead, none. So when they enter the market, they got to call you up and say, look, I can guarantee you 25 rail cars on this railroad on this week. Well, they're not running yet, so are you going to buy that? I wouldn't. So once they get up and running and you see the consistency and the quality, they have to buy their way into the market with two things, quality and price. Higher quality and lower price. So I think that rising tide of new plants will help raise all ships, i.e. the quality of soybean meal. I think the competition for your business will be greater in the future than you've seen the last 30 or 40 years. You guys are really important to the soybean industry, obviously. The expansion of domestic soybean processing is going to create new benefits. Again, availability, price, and quality, major components. And if you combine broilers, layers, and turkey consumption in the United States, about 2/3 of the meal that's produced in the U.S. goes into something with a feather. I keep saying feathers are our friends and feathers are our future, because without broiler growth, without layer growth, without turkey growth, these plants won't run hard. We will shut down some of the older, less efficient plants, and there could be 4 or 5 plants just by nature of the business that end up closing. So you may change your trade relationships anyway. If you've got an old, landlocked, non-refinery, fully depreciated processing plant you're buying from today, it might not survive. So anyway, feathers are the most important consumer of soybean meal, and we need you more than ever, either in more numbers or higher inclusion rates. So where does soybean, now I've totally got Greg's commitment fulfilled, I'm going to talk about stuff that I know. So where do soybeans, meal, and oil go in the United States? 55% of the beans grown in the U.S. are crushed, 41% are exported as whole soybeans. Soybean oil, 50% goes into food and feed, 49% into biofuels. That number will go up in the future. Only 1% of soybean oil gets exported. We're seeing about 11.76 actually pounds of oil per bushel of soybeans, which is pretty good. It's a historical flat number, but that's quite a few pounds of oil out of every bushel. Soybean meal, 70% of it is domestically fed, 30% is exported. That export number also has to go up in the future, but we would like to see the volume of soybean meal increase. It has to as well. With renewable diesel demand, U.S. is going to produce this additional 10 million metric tons in 2 to 3 years, and we need higher numbers and higher inclusion rates for these plants to run profitably. It's not a problem today, and I'm going to show you a crush margin calculation I just did a couple of days ago. Don't feel sorry for your processors. Don't cry for me, Argentina, because they're making really good money right now. So soybean processors making really good money, the U.S. farmer, not so much. This is the reason for the expansion of U.S. crush. And it started in California with the renewable diesel mandates that they play. We're not going to burn any more petroleum diesel in our trucks. California as an entity is the 4th largest economic powerhouse in the world. So it is a huge leading example. So when they said, okay, we can do renewable diesel, but no more petroleum diesel in a very short time frame to get that accomplished. So these refineries, petroleum refineries, converted over to renewable diesel using various feedstocks of used cooking, anything with a lipid, fundamentally they can make a renewable diesel out of. So you can see the light blue is the demand projections for renewable diesel, and even sustainable aviation fuel now is starting to pick up. So there's our oil demand, domestic industrial consumption. Again, a pretty linear chart. Used cooking oil. This is what kind of took the shine off of the exuberance of building new plant. A new plant costs $450 to $500 million to build a new soybean processing plant and a RBD type refinery. So it's not something that you just do willy-nilly. And then when the canola industry also expanded quite a bit up in Canada, and canola oil has a lower CI score than soybean oil. Granted, their meal doesn't have the essential digestible amino acid profile, so therefore the value on canola meal is lower. California dairy primarily, and then exports to China off the West Coast. But you can see where the used cooking oil imports has taken the shine off of the demand for domestic soybean oil. So here's canola oil at the bottom yellow, used cooking oil, and then the tallow, and all that has been a problem for soybean oil demand. I keep up a sheet that when I first started doing this, and Philip Lobo encouraged me to keep it up as much as I could, and now it's the industry standard. USDA, EPA, even the national oilseed processors, hedge funds use my spreadsheet. And I send it out to 25 trusted industry friends. They help me update the numbers. It's gotten easier to do. Even Bloomberg and Reuters will use my spreadsheet. So ADM, this is the current U.S. crush rate by company. The top 4 companies, ADM, Ag Processing, Bunge, and Cargill, have 45 plants today, which is about 76% of domestic solvent crush capacity in the United States. We have a total of 64 operating plants today. That will become 68 plants by the end of the year. About 210,000 metric tons per day of soybean crush capacity, 7.76 million bushels per day. I use 100%. No plant runs at 100%. We typically, on a budget request, would say we're going to run 350 days a year at 90 to 92% of crush capacity, and that's about what 92% is about. Argentina runs about 55%. We run at 90 to 92% of our stated crush capacities. Here are the new increased U.S. crush expansions. I zeroed some out. They got concerned about the importation of used cooking oil, the lack of clarity and consistency on the policy and the politics of sustainability and renewable diesel. And I've spoken to the folks at Argonne. We have anybody here from Argonne or GREET? Good. They don't know what they don't know. And it's embarrassing that these folks are dictating policies and therefore investments and therefore profitability. Because we went to them, I worked for another organization, and they have high oil, high protein beans. And I said, if you're getting more oil and more protein off the same crop with no yield drag, you should have a lower CI score. It doesn't fit our model. That literally was their answer. They finally came back 6 months later, and then they said, okay, the additional oil will go in at a 0 CI score, and then you do a weighted average. So they finally got logical, but only after we threatened to go public with how dumb they are. So I've zeroed some out because there are too many people too nervous about used cooking oil and canola oil and lard tallow and imported Argentine oil at a 19% tariff. California still allows it. So there are not a lot of soybean farmers growing. So California doesn't care about soybeans or soybean oil. So they allow Argentine oil in for these new refineries. So the ones, it says the maximum 1,000 metric tons per day crush capacity. The ones with 0 were announced, yeah, we're going to do this. And now they're saying, well, maybe we're on hold. The CHS Evansville, Wisconsin, number 15, large plant from an experienced, they own the land, they got the permits. It's on hold until they see what shakes out with the policies and such. So some of these you can see that are going to start up pretty soon. Bartlett Grain in Kansas, Norfolk, Nebraska, CGB in Castleton, North Dakota, and Schooler in Kansas. They're going to start up yet this year. We started Platinum Crush a couple of 3 months ago, and last year we had 2 new plants start up in Iowa, so more meal available already. The normal cycle, and it's like a sine curve of, oh, we're increasing and now we're not. Profitability is great and now it isn't. So the ones, the upper left, the light pink there, those are closed plants in the last 20 years. The green are the new plants in the last 20 years. So again, it's just going to be a normal cycle. We'll shut a few plants down. So make sure you maintain some flexibility in your purchasing and railroads. good geographic dispersity, which has helped the United States over Latin America, South America, Brazil and Argentina primarily, because we have good geographic dispersion and flexibility in how we process and export. Lots of Class A railroads, the Mississippi River, the P&W, and lots of money is going into expansions, particularly out of the P&W. Here's more good news for you. We've dropped the price at least $100 and probably a little bit more. I think we set a 4-year low price on beans and meal and maybe even corn within the last couple of weeks. So I think Dr. Kidd had some charts showing a similar thing. The demand, and I'm shocked, soybean meal is still the primary value component of a soybean processing plant, as I'll show you here in a second. We are inverted, meaning the nearby price of beans and meal is higher than the deferred price. Typically, we would be in contango or a carrying charge market. We are now inverted or backwardation. So don't buy ahead early right now because you're paying a premium. Wait to buy, and the processors are saying, well, I got good demand. I want to sell everything I can right now at a premium. So prices are down. Processors hate it when I show this, and I've been asked not to show this, but I'm old. I'm 71 years old. I'm retired, and Greg's laughing at me, so here it comes. There's 2 types of crush margin calculations. One is a CME synthetic crush. Doesn't mean much, but that's what everybody uses because it's open, it's public, it's published, and that's what the Chicago Mercantile Exchange takes a calculation of beans, meal, and oil, and they run it through their formulas, and they come up with a crush calculation. What are you selling the meal and oil at? What are you buying the beans at? It does not include basis levels. It does not include yields. I use real, actual traded basis levels on beans, meal, and oil. As you can see, the beans in this case, where it says cash basis, we're trading 40 cents a bushel over the Chicago Mercantile CME price for soybeans. Meal was trading at 45. Actually, some meal was trading at $70 and $80 a ton over the CME August futures. And soybean oil 100 points under, which is 1 penny. So then I figured out those cash prices, put them into the formula to convert them back to bushels. So we are crushing beans today for meal. By now, everyone thought we'd be crushing for oil. And there's 80% of a soybean is meal, 20% is oil. So you always have 4 times more meal than oil. Oil is almost always worth twice per pound what the meal is. But we have skewed those relationships up, at least in terms of pricing. At one point, we hit parity, 50-50 meal oil. It didn't last very long. And now we're back to 63% of the value of a bushel of beans is in the meal, 37% is in the oil. I'd expect that to shift a little bit more up towards the oil, but I've been wrong for at least the last year in these projections. $2.94 a bushel. And they may, I use 40 over, some places are bidding option price, some places are paying $1 a bushel over the CME. Several are at 20 and 30 over, some are at 60 and 70, so maybe we take 30 or 40 cents off of that. Maybe they're only making $2.60 a bushel. Their operating costs are about 50 cents a bushel, so they're still making well over $2 a bushel. If they're making average plant size is 120,000 bushels a day, so they're making $250,000 a day every day that it's a pretty good business right now. So don't feel guilty about the processors. Anyway, $108 per metric ton value out of a bush for processing today. It's a lot. It's good. Median sugars, and I get these from some folks from Evonik that have the data that's calculated for USEC, U.S. Soybean Export Council. So you can see that versus our competition in Argentina, Bolivia, and Brazil, the energy component, the number one most expensive cost component in a feed formula and to run a processing plant, energy, that we have an advantage. Potassium hydroxide solubility, the U.S. again an advantage over our competitors. Standard deviation of crude protein from, and this is just a U.S. calculation, you can see that's going down. I deal with Dr. Seth Nave out of Minnesota. He does an annual soybean survey. It used to be the northern beans weren't quite as valuable as the southern beans because of the protein, et cetera. And Seth says that standard deviation is mitigating. We're moderating the differences between the northern beans and the southern beans. And we're seeing higher median crude protein go up. Again, that's the annual basis. Evonik data from actual meal samples. And then again, just some, I'll give, anybody wants a copy of this, you're welcome to it. If you want a copy of the spreadsheet that shows every plant in much more detail, I've done it, I've been paid for it. Philip pays me, and I'm good to share with anybody that wants it. So, but you can see here the standard deviation is moving positively in all those areas. So, how am I doing? Have I got 2 more minutes? 3 minutes? 2.5 minutes left. Okay, well, here's 10 things I think are going to increase in the next few years because of this renewable diesel. More soybean meal exports, they have to go up. More soybean acres, I think the farmer's soybean profitability will increase. Soybean yields and production, every year that chart looks pretty good. We have to export more chicken and pork. We just have to. So whatever we need to do domestically, we produce the least expensive, the most sustainable, the most efficient, the safest. Soybean inclusion rates in feed, I think soybean meal will buy its way into formulas in a bigger way. I think we will see an increase in the trade volumes between China and Brazil. We already are. Food security and hunger, I think we're going to increase food security and reduce hunger because we're going to subsidize protein. We will see this desire for higher quality U.S. soybean meal increasing the competition with processors. Unfortunately, political interference in the economics of agriculture and soybean processing and feeding will continue to increase. The value of palm and other crops I think will go up as well because we want the oil. 10 things I think that will go down in the next few years. The percent of beans we export because we're going to crush them domestically. The protein in all forms because soybean meal is being subsidized. So whatever that ratio would be, meal versus poultry versus pork versus beef. I think processor margins, older plant closures, those will go down. Crush rationalization, I'm not sure we'll be able to run at 92%. We may be at 88 or 85 in the future. Seasonal export variability. We used to trade off with Brazil and Argentina. We'll take this time frame. We're going to have to export meal on a much more consistent basis. Argentina crush and export volumes. I think we could shut a few more plants down there because we are politically subsidizing soybean meal production. World crush, I think China may be able to, in the future, maybe they want to import meat and finished meal rather than beans. They want beans now because they want the oil, they want the meal, they want to keep people busy. I think in the future, the economics may be negative enough in processing, they'll just take meal and meat. Inclusion of DDGs and synthetic amino acids, I think that will probably go down as meal gets cheaper and higher quality. Exports of other commodities are going to compete with soybeans and meal. So the margins and demand for alternative or lab meat, I think, will go down as broilers and other forms of meat go down because of lower costs. Okay, I'm done. 10 million increase in soybean meal production next 2 to 3 years. Quality up, availability up, prices down, price to go away. I think quality goes up as well. So if you have any questions, if you want copies, let me know. You're needed now more than ever before. Thank you.